member for Villages OKC. I also chair Positive Aging, and so if this is your first visit here, we're glad you're here. Welcome. For those of you who are village members, raise your hand to see how many we've got here. All right, good deal. We got a good-sized crowd. Awesome. So if you're not a village member and you'd like information on that, we've got a table in the back. Miss April back there has all of our information. We'd love for you to consider joining. We are supportive of each other, and in some ways, that's how many of us survive caregiving, which is our topic today. So, anyways, let's get started. One of the things that we do, we like to start with the pledge, because we're proud that we live in a nation where we can do that, and after the 4th of July celebration and birthday for America, we're so glad for that. Marilyn, I'm going to ask Miss Marilyn to lead us in the pledge and the prayer. So, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for standing. Isn't this a great thing? I'm so grateful for you all and for this opportunity. Let's pledge, salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Lord Jesus, we come to you with gratitude in our hearts and happiness because of the people around us and the good that you've given us. Bless this day and those who share with us. Help us to listen, take notes, and be aware of what we can do to help each other. Amen.
Amen. Really appreciate that.
Everybody needs a little.
All right. Well, for those of you who are new, and even if you're not new, I want you to recognize our amazing education partners. I want you to hear me say that they are not sponsors. They are education partners. Everyone in this room, all of them, are dedicated and committed to providing resources to our greater community, whether that be the product or service that they offer, or pointing you in the right direction for what you need. They are trustworthy individuals, and we are grateful that they support villages. Many of them are village members and attend things on a regular basis, so we are so grateful. I would love to give them a round of applause for coming in. Thank you. If you have not stopped by their tables, I'm going to encourage you to do that, particularly for the conversation we're having today about caregiving. Caregiving is such an important topic, and there are so many of these folks, and you may say, well, what does real estate have to do with caregiving? Or what does Stretch Zone have to do with caregiving? But you'd be surprised what resources they have available for each of you. So I just want to encourage you to stop by and see their tables, even if it doesn't feel like they might have something that relates to this particular topic, because I assure you they do. So, the topic for the day, before we get started, I told you about Villages OKC. We are a village, and we do love to support each other. We are not a place. We are a plan. We are a group of people, and we are part of a greater organization. Village to Village Network is global, and we are proud to be the only Oklahoma village in the whole state. So we are grateful to be able to serve the community at large. So, our mission statement is to empower adults to age with vitality and purpose. Age is not a 4-letter word. It's actually only 3 letters. So let's don't call it negative, right? We want to be positive about aging. So that's where we get our name, Positive Aging. So what we do to help us stay positive in our aging is we resist normal. So for those of you who've been here, you know we do this every time. For those of you who are new, this is something we do. We say this out loud, so if you will join me in this. This is the year I resist normal, because normal is dehydrated, irritated, constipated, frustrated, overstimulated, overscheduled, undernourished, underrested, inflamed, and totally stressed out. I will resist normal. How many of you needed that today? So if we resist normal, what do? To resist normal, we declare this. This is my best decade yet. I am a joyful, mature adult. I enjoy lifelong learning, planning, and serving. Today, I will find someone younger to encourage. I love my age. This is my best decade yet. Woohoo! All right. Now, how many of you believe that? Y'all were a little deflated on that. I don't know. So I'm going to encourage you to embrace that, okay? All right. So today's topic, from family member to caregiver. This is a topic that's really near and dear to my heart. As many of you know, I work with Concordia. I've been there for nearly 14 years. I worked in the senior living industry for almost 2 decades. So I was pretty equipped for how to deal with situations. But I still found myself as a family member transitioning to caregiving. It was a challenge. And so I really hope that today's takeaways for you are personal and that you have an opportunity. You will notice your handout is a little different. For those of you who come on a regular basis, we're not going to go through, this is a topic, write down the answer. This is, it's going to be more of a conversation. Because I feel like stories are where we relate best and where we really maybe see ourselves and hear things that we might not know, right? So we will kind of follow an arc. You'll see, us talk about challenge and talk about balance and all of those things. So just jot down the notes that come to mind, and the things that you want to take away and maybe follow up on. You have a little white note card. At the end, we will have an opportunity for you to ask questions. Or if you want to jot down a question and turn it in, but not maybe have us read it out loud, we can do that too. So I just want to encourage you to do that. The last thing I'm going to mention before we get started is that you will get a little bit later when we do the questions and answers, we're going to pass out a survey. We do a survey so that we know how we're doing. We want to know if you're hearing what you came to hear, if we hit the mark, we missed, if you're having trouble hearing, all those things, we need to know that. In exchange for you filling out your survey, we're going to do a drawing. And I'm giving away 2 of these books. And these books are great. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about it. But the people that wrote this book were PhDs that studied caregiving and the effects of caregiving. And then they were caregivers. And guess what? They wrote a new book. So we have 2 of them, and we'll be giving those away. So if you want to be entered in the drawing for the book, just write book on your survey when you turn it in, and we'll make sure we get you in the drawing, okay? All right. So we are very fortunate today to have our wonderful guest speakers. And the first guest that we have today is Dr. Gerry Pinkston. How many of you guys know Dr. Pinkston from softball and UCO? She's a very fantastic coach, and we're very proud to have her here. And she's had a pretty illustrious career. And one of the things I really loved about Dr. Pinkston's story is the way that she encouraged her students and really was more holistic in her approach to education. And she has done that all of her life. So her being here and sharing her story really marries, I think, Dr. Pinkston with what you've done. So I'm going to go ahead and invite you to come on up. And we're going to get started. And today's format is going to be a little different. We're going to visit with Dr. Pinkston, and then we're going to invite her Magley up to talk. So we've got 2 guests today, all right? So I'm going to turn this over to you, Miss Dana. Thank you, ma'am. All right.
Hope that picture doesn't scare you.
So, let me get... All right, you got it on. Yeah. Test. All right, you talk like this and then I'll help. Okay. All right, so we've done our housekeeping, we've done all of that, we've connected. Last month, we talked about crisis management, right? So I want to segue into the fact that one of life's biggest transitions is becoming a caregiver. And there's no job description, and it doesn't necessarily come with a warning sign that it's going to happen. So I think that life just changes, right? So I would love for you to share a little bit about how you found yourself a caregiver, the very first time you found yourself a caregiver. Maybe share that story.
I guess, can you all hear me? Is this
No.
on? I don't think this is on.
Here, let's do that
Now?
one.
Okay. I guess the first caregiving situation was my dad. My father, I could tell he was not doing too well, and I encouraged them to go see a doctor. I kind of suspected a heart problem, and sure enough, to make a long story short, he had a procedure done that actually, in a sense, killed his kidneys. The procedure knocked loose cholesterol emboli that embedded in his kidneys. But he did have 3 arteries that were blocked, so he would have had to have heart surgery. But by having that procedure, he was hospitalized and gone in 3 weeks. So I didn't have to do a whole lot of caregiving in my dad's situation, but certainly with my mom, as a follow-up to helping her adjust, because that was kind of a surprise. He had been fairly healthy most of his life, but then I was in that situation of helping my mom adjust, living alone when you lose a spouse. I know some of you have probably gone through all this, but suddenly you lose a spouse and you're alone. So my brothers lived in Texas, so all the caregiving pretty much fell on me. Of course, I'm the only daughter too, and sometimes that's, you know, I love the guys who do great caregiving, but a lot of times it's left to us ladies because we're nurturers. But anyway, so I helped my mom kind of through this transition period, and she lived alone in Chickasha, our hometown, for about 8 years. And then I was driving back and forth, helping her. My mother, I guess my mother's downfall was when she had the beginning of macular degeneration. And I know a lot of you are familiar with that because it affects your eyes and your eyesight. So at one point she called and said, I don't think I ought to be driving. God, thank you. Most of my friends, their moms or dads, would be so stubborn about giving up the keys. Most of us would be because it changes your independence. But my mom blessed me. I will tell you that probably several times. My mother was a blessing to me because she yielded and said, would you help me, and I will do whatever you think I need to do. And at one point she even said, I think I need to quit driving. So that meant that I did do a lot more trips from Edmond to Chickasha, you know, to try to help her. And then finally one day she said, I think I ought to move over to Edmond where you are to make it easier on you. And even though it was not hard on me, because I was only going down every couple of weeks, she thought that it was. And she said, I don't want to move in with you because I don't want to be a burden, but I want to be closer. So again, bless me in that situation. So I moved her to senior community, and again, she thrived for about 7 years independently, and then she began to need a little more help. So I moved her to assisted living. At 97 in assisted living, she fell and broke her hip. I thought that would be the downfall at 97. A lot of times the statistics say it is. But my mom was pretty healthy and she recovered. On her 95th birthday, she told me that she did not want to live to be 100. We celebrated her 100th birthday, and she died 4 days later. Now that was 3 days before her 100th birthday, because we actually celebrated the weekend before. And then she died before she reached 100, so she got her wish. But anyway, so that was the beginning, and I will tell you that I've attended these seminars of the Senior Living True Series of Villages, for probably over 10 years, and the knowledge that I learned through a lot of these seminars helped me navigate the beginning of all of this, of caregiving for my parents.
I really appreciate that. Can y'all hear me? No? Yes? Okay. I'll try to talk it out. How's that? So I'm going to back up a little bit. So your first bout of caregiving was short. It was acute. And you found yourself probably in a situation, you were still working at the time, correct? Yep. And then caregiving for mom. On top of that, now her health didn't decline immediately, did it? No. So did you find in the time frame of your dad's situation, can you hear me? Nope. I'm going to try that other mic. Somebody in the back, can see if we can find somebody to get us a new one. That'd be great. Thank you. All right. Is that one better? Yeah? Okay. So I think it's important for those of us in the room that are caregiving or that maybe aren't in that role yet, right? Or we know that it's coming maybe because of the diagnosis or something like that, that it evolves, right? And you found yourself having to shuffle and make changes in your schedule to accommodate as things changed, right? So did you ever feel like there was a time when your role changed and you stopped feeling like you were a daughter and you were more of a navigator or a nurse or whatever, fill in the blank?
I have a word that I call fixer.
Fixer, okay.
Because
like that?
it's like you all of a sudden are thrust into the role of fixing everything. You know, whether that's making appointments, whether that's just going and like at one point I was going on Sundays and fixing my mother's clothes, so that and lining them up for the week. And I told her this is Monday, this is Tuesday, and so on, because she couldn't see, you know, to coordinate her clothes. So just, I mean, from little things to large things, large decisions that you had to make, and because you're a daughter, you know, you're the one that pretty much has to do it.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay, that's fair. I'm going to segue just for a second. I know you are familiar with the gift, and there's a section in there that we talk about personal preferences, and I think it's really interesting that you were talking about lining your mom's clothes up and all of that. Well, one of the things that out of that personal preference section is you knew well enough to know that your mom probably cared about what she was wearing and how she was dressed, and that she wasn't going to want to wear things that didn't match or that were uncomfortable, right? But if people don't know that, it's hard to help, right? So for the gift section, I think people sometimes wonder why do we have that in there, but when you talk about it, I'm like, it's important. I always talk about my dad and the fact that my dad liked his coffee black, and he also only wanted that much. And I don't care who you were, how many times he'd been to your restaurant, he'd tell you he just wanted to swallow because he didn't want it to get cold. So if he had moved to an environment where somebody else was caring for him and had not been told, they would probably put cream and sugar and all that and fix his coffee, and here you go, Mr. Jake, you know, and that wouldn't have been what he wanted, right? So that section's important. So for those of you who have that, I wonder, yeah.
I will say, you all need to think about if something happens to you, who do you want to caregive for you?
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times it falls on a spouse, a partner, whatever, and do you want that person to physically take care of you? Because there are people, I've had a friend who said, when my time comes, just send me to the assisted living. I don't want you or any of my friends taking the physical care of me. Mm-hmm. I might want you to do my business, but I don't want, you know, and I think sometimes that makes a difference as to who the caregiver should be and what the capacity that you have to be able to be a caregiver. And I know Herb will tell you this, and I certainly feel like it to some extent. If you can get the person you're caring for to be cared for physically by somebody else, I guarantee it will help your relationship with them emotionally daily.
Yeah.
Because when you're trying to do it all, now like I said, my mother, I didn't have her in my home, so I wasn't 24/7 physically and mentally and caring for her and doing my own job and my own business and her business. It really takes a toll that you have no idea, and I didn't have that burden because my mother did live in an assisted living. They were doing the physical care and I could do the rest. And I almost think it helped my mom live longer. She lived longer. And our relationship stayed wonderful because I wasn't so stressed to do the whole business. So I would really encourage you to think a lot about that. And I know I went to a seminar, my first seminar I probably ever went to, there was a lady who was talking about, and this made a really good impression, and I think her was in the same situation. She said, I married my husband, and she said, we took wedding vows that we would take care of each other till death do us part. And I thought that meant that I had to do the whole business. And when her husband had Alzheimer's, and she said there were many situations that occurred while she was trying to keep him at home, and her adult children kept saying, Mom, I think you all need to go to a senior community if you can, or let us get some people to come in and help. And she said, no, I made this vow, I'm going to do it. Well, the night that he started getting dressed and walking out the door at 3 in the morning, and she said, I physically had to restrain him, and he's bigger than I was, and that was very hard. She said, I wasn't sleeping because I had one eye open, one eye shut every night. And she said, finally, when we moved to a senior community, we put my husband in memory care, but he was just down the hall from me. And she said, they took care of him and kept him safe while I got to go just have lunch and visit and back to our relationship that we had in our married life until he died. So I would just encourage that, and for each of you to think about who would be your caregiver, and is that person capable of it? And also, when things happen to you, consider the person that's going to caregive for you and what they are going to be going through, because caregiving takes a toll.
It does, and I'm so glad you shared that. And it's we ran into the same situation with my dad. So the diagnosis was a glioblastoma, brain tumor. We knew he had 10 months to live, and so it was not where this is going to make your life better situation. But it did. I was grateful, like you. My mom was open to having help come in because she realized she probably tried for about 5 weeks to do it on her own, and she realized she couldn't. And like the lady you were talking about, she was smaller in stature, and my dad's brain tumor was in the frontal lobe, and so his decision making was impacted. And I share this because I'm so glad that you mentioned it. It is oftentimes a burden that we carry privately, that we are not doing enough, and we allow guilt to set in, that we're letting our loved one down, or we made a promise and now we can't keep that promise and we feel guilty about that. So I always encourage people to think about the fact that when you had a child, most of us had it in a hospital. Most of us did. Now, some of you may have delivered at home, and good for you if you did, but most of us went to a hospital and let somebody else deliver because we knew we needed help. That doesn't mean you love your child less, right? You sent them off to school. Now, some of you homeschool. Great. Good on you if you did. But most of us send our kids off to school because the people who are educated to educate are teaching. That doesn't mean you love your child less. So why is it that we think that if we're not caregiving for our loved one, that we're not doing what we need to do? In a sense, hiring somebody from the outside to provide that expert care is caring for your loved one. So I want to encourage you in that, and I'm so glad you brought that up. So that's the reality for sure. Now you were a caregiver for a decade, not just with your parents. It morphed. So who else have you cared for?
A group of us who worked together. There were quite a few of us. We became really close friends. So I had a group of about 15 friends. Some of them single ladies and some widows, but we were all in a group. And of those 15, there's 6 of us left. I was the youngest, and one of the ladies that I'll tell you a little bit about was the oldest. I became her primary caregiver. But 2 or 3 of those friends in between, I was kind of more of a secondary caregiver because another one of my friends was primary. She did the business stuff, and then I did the running around and helping fix things and stuff. So we helped, in those cases, we helped those ladies move to a community, sell their house. 4 of us moved all of their stuff out of their house. The last person we did that with, I said, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore, because throughout that time I've aged, and it's a lot harder physically. And then the last lady, like I said, was really a mentor to me, and she didn't have any family, and she started having some problems. She had 4 wrecks in 3 years. I was, sadly in a way, helping her get a new car each time. But when she had the 4th wreck, I said, that's it, I'm not doing any more. And I tried to think about what could we do, because she said, let's go get another car, and I was going, Each time it was her fault. She ran into the other car. Luckily, during that time, didn't hurt anybody. But I got the idea. We both had the same ophthalmologist, and I went to the ophthalmologist, had an appointment with him, and said, what can we do? He brought her in, and he told her, you are 1 full level below the limit to drive. And if you keep driving, I can't make you stop, but if you keep driving, you're going to have another wreck, and sometime you're going to hurt somebody. They're going to sue you, and they'll come get my records about your eyesight. You're going to lose everything. So that day she quit driving. She was devastated, and at that time she was 88, 89, and devastated. She lived alone in her house. So she said, what am I going to do? So I got six of us, took a day each, and we called and asked her if she wanted to go somewhere, took her out or whatever. We did that. The 7th day was a lady from our church, take her to church. So 6 of us did this for a year and a half. And finally one day she said, here's the keys, I'll move to the senior community. We moved her, and literally she thrived at the senior community. She could get her independence back, because she could come and go when she wanted. It was a great thing, and in her case it helped a lot. The tough love, sometimes you have to do stuff that, that was probably one of the hardest decisions I made in caregiving for friends, was to get her to stop driving. So she was the last person. She died 2 years ago this month. Transitioned from independent living to assisted living, and to the last 7 months of memory care. And so, I'm now out from under the umbrella of caregiving for a while, I hope.
Yeah.
So it's nice to be able to have some time to take a breather, and I just recently moved, and that was an ordeal, so I'm taking care of me right now.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that too, and before we do, I just want to highlight the fact, many of your stories, the folks moved into a community. Like, that was the solution, and they were either open to it and it was their idea, or they came to the conclusion, or you let them there, whatever, it's a combination of things. But I want, for those of you who a community is not an option, I want you to know that that's where villages can come in. So some of you want to stay in your own home, and villages operates in some ways, like you were saying, the 6 people that got her out, that's something a village would, village members would do, is, I'll take Monday, I'll take Tuesday, let's get her, let's get you where you want to be so that you can participate. So I don't want you to hear that moving to a community is the only option, because it's not. Living in community is what helps people thrive. So wherever you do that, whether it's living in a place like Concordia, or it's a different community, the gated communities, there's lots of different options out there, right? You're at where are you? Touchmark, okay. So there are all kinds of options out there, right? And some have all levels and some don't. But what we're hoping your takeaway is you're not meant to do it alone. So please know that surrounding yourself with other people is a big piece of this. And also, having autonomy helps you thrive and live longer. That's one of the things that you mentioned multiple times, is after they moved, they thrived. And it was because they could go and do as they wanted to without the dependence of having to burden or inconvenience somebody, right? All right, so we're going to segue. You did this for a decade, and you're a fit gal. You were a softball coach, and I'm sure you were an athlete before that. So did it take its toll on you? Let's talk about that a little bit.
During the time of caregiving for my mom, I thought I was handling everything just fine. Like I said, I didn't really have a whole lot of help, but I started having AFib problems. I think probably, and I will tell you, I wish that I had a support group during that time. At that time I was going through all of that. Most of the support groups were for Alzheimer's, people with memory problems. My mom didn't really have memory problems. Anyway, I was kind of holding all that in, trying to do all of it, and like she said, part of the time still working, but then I retired. But I developed AFib, and 7 times to ER, heart hospital, and had a heart ablation, which fixed me. I got fixed. That was in 2018. So that heart ablation fixed my problem. I hadn't had any other real physical issues, so I think probably it was good that I got that opportunity to have that ablation without other health issues. So yes, in most of my life I've been pretty healthy. And so that was a realization, though, that I wasn't handling things the way I thought I was. Because it was taking a physical toll on me that I didn't realize. And I would just really reinforce the idea that when you're caregiving, you will not realize the toll it's taken on you until it does some way or another. So yeah.
Yeah, it's I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine.
Well, you don't have
you're not fine.
You don't have time to even think about yourself. Sure. You don't think about yourself.
Right.
You've got somebody that you're caring for, and you've got to go do that, and you're just not thinking about yourself. And like I said, it takes its toll.
So I'm gonna, with that, if you look back, I want you just for a second to think, when do you think your caregiving quietly became your identity instead of your role?
I don't know that it became an identity. When friends call, if you're available, you just do it. And one of the situations, one of my friends called she lived by herself in Norman, and she called one day and she said, I've fallen. It's kind of like falling and can't get up. She said, I've fallen and I've hurt myself and I don't know what to do. And I said, call an ambulance, and a couple of us will be there. We drove to Norman. We also told her to be sure your door's open so the ambulance people can get in. She ended up with a broken hip and a broken shoulder. And as you know, it's hard enough to recover from a broken hip. But if you have a broken shoulder, it's kind of hard to start rehabbing with a walker or whatever they try to do. So she was one of those that, you know, we ended up, she spent quite a long time in a rehab facility. And then she said, I just can't go back to my house. You know, I don't have anybody. So we said, okay, do you want us to sell the house for you? Yes. She's one of them that we sold her house, and with the money of the sale of her house, you know, she was able to move into the senior community. She was in assisted living. Believe she made it a year and a half and died. Just complications that occurred. So,
But for you, you didn't really see it as an identity. It was just a role you served.
yeah, and like I said, probably because we had this group of friends.
Right.
And some of them, like I said, single by either being that way or widowed. We just have had a group that we're friends and we rely on each other for different things. And so, you know, like I said, I'm the youngest, so I guess I was probably the more logical one because I had more energy.
By default.
Maybe. Yeah, but I don't consider it an identity really. It's just something that you go through in life. It's a part of the journey.
Right. Yeah.
I never dreamed or thought about being a caregiver, but I'm glad I had gone to a lot of the seminars and had some of the tools to begin with to know what to do, or the network of people to call. You know, that's helped also.
Yeah, I think the education and being proactive to know what your options are, all of that is huge. And my mom would often say to me, what do people do that don't have a daughter that knows this stuff, right? But she doesn't have access to education like this. We've got 4 really great, you know, educating partners that are here in the Oklahoma area that are sharing this seminar type information free on a regular basis. So you are educating yourselves, and I think that's great. I know a lot of us probably see ourselves in your story, Gerry, so thanks for sharing that. I'm going to invite Magley to come up, because we're going to shift gears a little bit. We've talked a lot about caregiving realities, what it's like when you transition and when maybe you don't realize you're a caregiver and all that stuff. And Herb has a very similar story in that he cared for his wife. So I am going to let you share a little bit about your original journey as a caregiver and then what that's launched into, Herb. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, to start, and I know a lot of you have heard my story before, but we moved up here, and Gail from Texas in the early 2000s. My wife started showing some signs that I recognized because we'd seen her father go through this. She was 52 when she started showing some of these signs. So our problem was, what do we do about it? And we tried to find a doctor. I went to her doctor and said, you know, I'd like to have her evaluated. And she said, well, Herb, I've never seen any issues with this. And I said, well, you only see her for 15 or 20 minutes at a time. You're not going to see these things. She's going to hide them from you. And I said, we need to go to a neurologist. Well, that was a nightmare. I mean, if any of you have tried to find a neurologist that knows anything about Alzheimer's, there's only a handful of them in town. And we didn't end up with one of those. He said, oh, she's just depressed. And I said, did you give her a test for that? And he said, yeah. And I said, what did it come up being? Well, that she's not depressed. I said, then why are we going down this route? Well, she's too young to have Alzheimer's at 52. And I reminded her that, well, you know, her dad had it in his late 50s, and he lived in a remote farm in Ohio. And, you know, nobody saw him, so actually it was my wife that diagnosed him with the issue. So anyway, one thing led to another, and we went through a year of the depression part of it until he finally realized, oh, well, there's probably something more serious wrong with that. So we went through the next year of eliminating those things that mimic Alzheimer's, like untreated Lyme disease, thyroid, infections. So once a month we went in and got tested, and finally at the end of the year he did a PET scan, which was relatively new at that point in time, which, by the way, the insurance company wouldn't pay for. And they were even told when the outfit that was going to do the survey or the scan they said, you know, if it's Alzheimer's, we're not paying for it. And we kind of already knew that, so I ended up with this $4,000 bill for that, which I did negotiate down to a couple $1,000. By the way, I'll tell you, do that. When you get bills like that, go in and negotiate with them. They'll negotiate. So anyway, I got the call from his nurse and said, Mr. Magley, everything is consistent with Alzheimer's. And I said, great, can I talk to the neurologist? And she said, no, we're done with you. Click. That was it. No referrals, no anything. And I was shocked after I managed to get into a support group, which was a lifesaver. I was amazed at how many people in that support group had had the same treatment. One guy got his letter through the mail on Saturday, dear sir, you have Alzheimer's. And that's it, you know, and it's like, you didn't have anybody to call, or it's a nightmare out there. And I realized that, and that's what changed my direction. I retired from a great job with a great company to take care of Gail in her final stages, but I also wanted to get involved with saving the caregiver, because the caregiver in this whole thing is the unknown victim. We lose 1 out of every 5 Alzheimer's family caregivers dies before the person they're taking care of. 1 out of every 5 Alzheimer's family caregivers dies before the person they're taking care of. Now, I'll tell you what, in the years that I've been, and that's why I decided, well, I'm going to take care of the caregivers. And so I've started 10 caregiver support groups. I still run 5 of those. And I have never, in the 12 years that I've been doing this and watching other caregiver groups too, I've never seen us lose a caregiver that gets support, particularly from a support group. You don't have to come every time, but you know, once a month, you've got a group of people there that are going through the same nightmare that you are. And it's a real plus. I've never seen us lose a caregiver that does it. So get involved.
That's really great. Thank you for sharing that. So we've got, you know, what it's like, what it feels like to be a caregiver. We understand that, and I love that your experience is what motivated you to go past that and find solutions. And I know your heart is obviously for Alzheimer's, but we know that caregivers in general, regardless of what the issue is, any chronic condition that requires constant care is going to wear on people. So I know that you lead the charge in trying to get people to support groups. I want to share with you guys, we do have if you'll start writing your questions down, we're going to start collecting those here in just a few minutes. But Herb, I want you to talk a little bit about how you moved from being a caregiver, because, and Gerry alluded to this, you did eventually stop being the primary caregiver and had Gail move into a memory community that could support her. Did you transition into advocacy at that point, or was it later? Was it after she passed?
Carla, when was it?
When, Carla, do you have the date and time that you met her?
Carla is a huge resource. She used to work for the Alzheimer's Association and did the education programs,
Yeah.
which are a big help too.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, so I don't know exactly how to answer the question.
That's fair.
I will tell you this, that we had a support group of about 12 of us. We were all younger onset support group people. And we all said that we were never going to put our loved one in a nursing home, is what we called it.
A facility.
And we call it communities now,
Right.
the gentler version. But, and we all, I'll tell you, we were in a circle one night. And by the way, my support group was 10 women and me. And they all called themselves my sister wives. I'm not sure what that meant. I knew there was a TV show, but I decided I wasn't going to evaluate that. And one of them even said, I probably shouldn't say this, but one of them said she was gay, and she said, you know, I would never take a shower with anybody but Herb. So, I'm not sure what that meant either, and I never followed that. But, you know, the neat part about the support group was there were funny things that went on. We were sitting in the circle, and the lady next to me said, I'm never going to get married then, because I can't do this again. And they went all the way around the circle, and I thought, am I going to have to answer this? So they got to me, and the facilitator said, well, what about you, Herb? Because every one of them said the same thing. And I said, don't I have to answer that? And they said, well, yeah, you're part of the group. And I said, okay, well, I don't think it matters because nobody else wants to get married. So I said, how about dinner and a movie? And I never had to answer the question. So, but that's what you get out of a support group is some humor out of this. And we go to dinner afterwards. We got to know the people with the disease because it was a support group where you brought your loved one with them, and we had the caregiver side and we had the side with the disease, which I still run that same support group at the Alzheimer's Association now. And it's kind of funny because you go to our side, the caregiver side, and everybody's groaning and moaning, and you go to the other side and they're laughing and having a good time. So it's, but it is essential that you cover both of those things. But, and I'll tell you what, I don't think, we all became very good friends in that support group, and we tried to support each other. And like I said, we all said we were never going to go to a nursing home. Well, one of the gentlemen one night, and the caregiver came in, and she was just in tears because it had happened that week. He ran away from home. He just got up and left, and he ran across, I don't know how he did this, but he ran across 8 lanes of Broadway extension at rush hour and didn't get hurt. But he was in the bad part of town when a deputy sheriff happened to be driving by and said, he shouldn't be here. So he goes over to talk to him. Well, the guy thought the policeman was going to rob him or something, so they got into a little tussle. And fortunately, and I highly recommend this, he had the bracelet on that we recommend that people put on. You wear one as a caregiver, and they wear one as the one with the disease. And when he saw that, he said that made the difference between me taking him to the jail versus taking him to the emergency room. And what the OU hospital called her up and told her was, and that bracelet allows her to call her up, they said, you've got 2 days. We will keep him here 2 days. You've got 2 days to find a place for him to stay. And that's it. And so all of a sudden she's moving, she puts him in a place, but that wasn't right. And she moved him 2 or 3 times. And that told the rest of us, it was a wake-up call. I called up my wife's sister who worked in a manor care facility up in Ohio and asked her if she could come down for spring break, and I would put Gail into an adult daycare and we would look for a place. And we looked at 20 different places. Now there are outfits that will help you do it for free to find a place. But my number 1 spot was her number 2 spot and vice versa. But we found out one of them was not an end-of-life community, and I didn't know that. But I did notice there's no wheelchairs in it, there's nothing else, and I said, well, I'm not going to move her, I want to put her someplace. So anyway, we did find a place for her. And I'll tell you, the advantage that I found out of that is I wasn't doing the heavy lifting anymore, the things that were wearing me out, cleaning out diapers, food, because I'm not a very good cook. And I said the only advantage of her Alzheimer's was she couldn't remember how bad the last meal was, so she always did the next. I was the one that had to suffer through my bad cooking. But as a result of that, I got to be the spouse again. I wasn't worn out. I'd go in, I could walk with her, I could hold her hand, I could listen to music, watch TV, sit out in the courtyard. And it took about 9 months for me to get over the guilt of putting her there, to realize this is helping both of us. So
I think that it's human nature, right? And so I'm really grateful to both of you for sharing the personal side of your story. I know that your journey Herb led you into advocacy, so not just leading support groups, you do way more than that.
Right.
So I'm going to let you talk a little bit about some of the advocacy. I've got some information I'm going to pull off here and grab some cards. So if you guys have questions, I'm going to let you talk about your advocacy and what you do with that.
Okay. At the Alzheimer's Association, we deal with this at the state level, but we also do the federal level. There is a volunteer ambassador that is assigned to every senator and every representative at the federal level. So when we go, and once a year we go to DC, we just got back from that, Terry Dillon went to, and we form teams and we go and we talk to each one of these. Sometimes you don't get to talk to the representative or the senator, but you get to talk to their staff, and sometimes that's more important, believe me, because they're the ones that influence them. But that's what we do. We also have a day when we go to the state and we visit with all of them as well. And we don't pound the table about this, but we tell them what's going on. There's an act that we went after this year, which is called ASAP. We're interested in doctors getting trained in this better than they are. We're interested in, like Medicare, for instance. I don't know if you know, but Medicare will not pay for a procedure if you don't show symptoms. Well, the one thing that changed that was mammograms. They decided, hey, we'll pay for mammograms, for your annual mammogram. So we're going in and we're saying, we now have a blood test that will show us whether we have this. And when you show symptoms of this disease, you have had it for 10 to 20 years. It's just your brain's been able to work around the problem areas. When it can't do that anymore is when you show symptoms. Well, it's a little too late then. What if we can get back into that, what we call the preclinical stage of this? And so we're pushing, and we have had more senators and more representatives that have signed up or have co-signed this bill. So it's going to happen one of these days. And doctors probably don't even realize that there is a blood test out there that will help you determine this. So look forward to this. Keep talking to your doctor, because I bet within the next year we're going to have that paid for by Medicare. And it's about a $500 cost, from what I understand.
Just real quickly, I want to share that when I was going to move my mom from independent living to assisted, so it raises the cost, as you know. Through some of this education, I knew that she would qualify for some VA help. And so my mother received like $1,200 a month as a spouse of a veteran. And my last friend that I helped was a veteran of the Korean War, and she received $2,300 a month. So between her teacher retirement, Social Security, and the VA help, it almost paid for all the way through memory care. So I just want to share that with you, that you can go to the VA if you have somebody you're caring for that either has been a spouse or also was a veteran.
Particularly, one other thing with my brother-in-law, if they have served during any conflict, and he served 2 days during Vietnam, at the end of it, when he went to, he had Lewy body dementia. When he went in, they ended up paying 1/3 of that cost, which was $4,500. So they paid $1,500 of that just because of that cost, because of that. So there is help out there from the VA.
I'm so glad y'all mentioned that. So one of the things that Herb was talking about, advocacy and how they're going to Congress, and we're trying to educate folks on what's out there. I'm really proud to announce that Oklahoma is leading the way, folks. Can you hear me? No?
Can you hear me? Is that better? All right, sorry about that. I got in trouble for being loud my whole life, so I figured people can hear me. So, sorry. Oklahoma is leading the way as it comes to caregivers. House Bill 4118 was just passed. Back up. Is that better? Okay. All right. Am I in the sweet spot? Goldilocks? Okay. So House Bill 4118 was just passed. It is a caregiver tax credit. We have information on that at the Concordia table. You can pick that up. It just lets you know what's available to you and kind of an overview of what the House bill is and what it represents. It's a place to start. It's not perfect, but it's a place to start. And other states are referring to our advocacy and what we're doing locally to make it a priority in their state too. So I just think that that's really a big deal, and I want you guys to know about that. I also want to talk a little bit about the importance, we've talked quite a bit about the importance of caregiving, support groups. And I was talking with a friend of mine whose husband has early onset. He was an engineer. He is very antisocial. And the idea of joining a group is absolutely a no-pass, not happening. So, you're not alone if that's you. And if you find yourself in a situation where you would love to join a support group but you can't figure out how to do that, or you're not sure how to navigate that, A, reach out, whether it's Alzheimer's or not. And Alzheimer's has a hotline, right? They have a 1-800 number?
Correct.
Yeah. Is that on the 25 rules sheet?
Yeah, it's,
Okay.
yeah.
So Herb has at the table over here, he's got the 25 rules for caregivers. Please pick that up if you're caregiving or know somebody that is. That is a huge tip sheet and it's awesome. But they have a 1-800 number that you call and a real person answers, and you can call crying about whatever they said to you, however they're behaving. You're locked in the bathroom, you don't know what to do because they've gone ballistic. Lewy bodies is an example of that. They lose their mind and they are hostile sometimes. And you've got yourself in a situation that you don't know what to do. Call that 1-800 number, because put it on speed dial on your phone, because they can walk you through it. Some of you are here with people that you're caring for that aren't, it's not Alzheimer's. We get that. And that's why I wanted Gerry to be here, because she cared for people for a decade and they were not memory issues. So our journey can be all kinds of different things, right? One of the things that's a common thread for any caregiver is mental health. How many of you have heard the saying, you can't pour out of an empty cup? You cannot pour out of an empty cup. You are not being selfish for taking care of yourself. That is really critical, because you can't take care of somebody else if you haven't taken care of you. I had a really sweet friend who moved her mom to Concordia, and I'm going to tell you, her mom wouldn't have come if we hadn't had a hard conversation. She came because her daughter was having knee surgery, and the knee surgery daughter came to Concordia to say, I'm going to have to do skilled nursing because I live with my mom, and my mom is 95 years old. So, how can I reserve a room? Because I know I need to do it here because my house is down the street. And so I talked with her, we got things worked out, and I said, I have a question for you. What's going to happen to Mom while you're here? And she goes, well, she's okay most of the time. I've got some friends checking on her. And I said, hold up. I said, is there a world where you would let her come to Concordia and stay respite in our assisted living, which is down the hall from you, so that you can get your care and get better, and Mom is taking care of it, you don't have to worry? Because are you going to get better faster or slower if you're worried about somebody? Right? But we don't think about that. So respite care is another option. So I want to make sure people realize that that's something that you can take advantage of. Fast forward, her mom never left. Because to Gerry's point, she found out she had autonomy again and she didn't have to do things the way her daughter wanted her to do it. So she got to stay at Concordia. She said, I got money, I can stay here if I want to. So that was not our motive, but she did stay, and she lived to be 103 years old, and she loved it. So it was a really win-win for everybody. So, but I like telling that story because the daughter, who was the caregiver, was so far in it that she couldn't see that she wasn't thinking clearly, that leaving Mom at home was a really good option, right? So mental health is a really important part of being able to take care of somebody else. We've got some papers here about mental health.
and those are also at the Concordia table. Those come from the Department of, actually it's from Rush Institute, but from our Oklahoma State mental health folks are who provided that. And then the last one is another organization that is new to Oklahoma, I believe. Yes, so Shannon, wave your hand over here. Many of you know Shannon. She has participated in the Senior Living True Series. She's a real estate professional that has her certified senior housing professional designation. She serves families very well and has for a long time. But she felt it was really important because of what she does. She saw a real need to support adult children because, as Gerry mentioned, if you're supporting a parent, it's really hard sometimes, and some people need that extra support. And so, as a support group kind of environment, we have, this is over at Shannon's table, so it'll give you all the information about the adult child. So even if you know somebody who's walking in that world, grab some information for them, because she's going to start having quarterly, monthly meetings for them. So that'll be an exciting way to support them. So I'm going to take questions. If you have any, anybody have questions? No? One? Carla's got a question. Carla.
Well, Herb, could you explain to everybody, you mentioned how the person with the disease wore a bracelet up, and you also said the caregiver too. Why did the caregiver need to wear a bracelet?
Oh, good. Why did the caregiver need a bracelet?
Well, I wore one because if something happened to me, it referred them over to my son to know that he was going to have to go take care of Gail because I couldn't. So you both wear a bracelet.
That's good. Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Where did you get the bracelets from?
Oh,
Did we get them from the Homeowners Association or?
Well, yeah, you could go online to the association, and they have special phones that you can do because we're all concerned about scams. You can put these phones in, and you can just put the numbers that they can call, and they can call them back, so you don't have to worry about scammers. And it's the same way they have Safe Alert is the name of the one we use. You can submit a picture of them to it too, and that way, if the person does get lost, they'll have a picture of them that the police can use.
so I'm going to repeat that just in case folks didn't hear. Lisa, your question was where they get the bracelets. Herb, you said the Alzheimer's Association actually provides us. If they contact Alzheimer's Association, does the individual need to have Alzheimer's diagnosis?
That I don't know. And
Okay,
Safe,
they are
Safe
available.
Alert is the name of the
Safe
outfit.
Alert.
Yeah.
Safe Alert. And I'm going to tell you, we use the same thing. We've got folks that do that. We've got signature.
Hi, Herb.
I don't have a runner with a mic. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Hi, Herb. I just wanted to ask too, does the Alzheimer's Association still offer the free cards that you can take out when you're mobile and in the community about your loved one?
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
It's the Please Be Patient card, and we've got a stack of them over here. We pass them out like candy, and if I can real quickly tell you, one of the reasons I used them is my daughter was 16 when my wife was diagnosed, and whenever we traveled, we put my wife between us, and I got on Southwest Airlines. I didn't know you could pre-board with Alzheimer's. And the only 3 seats I could find was a middle seat for my daughter, the aisle seat for my wife, and I had the aisle seat across from her. And this lady walked up from the back of the plane before we took off, and she stopped in the row of seats in front of me. But that was my respite time. I had picked up a book and I was reading it, and I kind of noticed it, but I didn't pay any attention until I realized I didn't hear any talking. And I looked up at her. I had never seen anybody look at me with the rage and anger that that woman had. She wanted to rip me out of that seat and throw me out on the runway. And I shrugged, and she turned around and literally stomped to her seat further up in the plane. And I looked at the passengers around me, and nobody was paying any attention. And I looked over at my daughter, and she's doubled over in her chair laughing. And I said, "Hey, Bethany, when you're done laughing, can you tell me what just happened?" And she said, "Yeah, Dad, when that lady walked by, Mom smacked her on the butt." and the lady thought it was you. So I'm sure there's some lady out telling this story completely differently than what I'm telling. But from there on out, whenever we travel, I had those cards, and I passed them out to every single flight attendant. People pass them out when they go to the doctors. When you go to a restaurant, the wait staff just melts when you give them those cards. So thanks for for bringing that up.
It's a blessing, thank you.
Okay, so we've got a couple of questions for you guys. As you reflect, what are some steps to prepare a family that they could take maybe a decade before a disease or health crisis even occurs? Are there some steps that you could take? I know you mentioned Gerry a lot about kind of the classes and the seminars.
I'm a proactive person for one thing, so I'm always looking for things, great networking. Having that in place is probably the best thing I could say is, have phone numbers ready, and just kind of keep in touch with the people that are around you and watch for signs and symptoms of changes. That's one of the... She asked me if I'd done the gift. I did do that, but I had done all of that prior to going to the gift.
Because you're proactive.
Because I'm proactive. I even, if you ever go out to Memorial Park Cemetery in Edmond, my tombstone is up out there. That's how proactive I am, because I have had that taken care of, end of life kinds of things, and I've encouraged my family to do the same. I guess the first time I learned about this is when I was with a friend who had taken her dad to church, and her mom was there, and I was with her mom. And her mom knew she was having a health issue, and she looked at me and she said, if something happens to me, I want so-and-so to have this, so-and-so, and I went, wait, you need to tell your daughter that. I said, when she gets home from church, let's make a list. And that was kind of the first clue. When I used to be with my grandmother, she started saying things to me like, if anything ever happens to me, I would like so-and-so to have this. And I would go, oh, I don't want to hear that because I just want you, Well, listen, because after she died, I thought, now what was it she told me she wanted to do with that? Because you want to honor their wishes. So that's the kind of thing I would say, listen to people and what their wishes are. And if you can be proactive, it helps tremendously. My dad in the hospital, the Monday before he died, he said, I want all treatment stopped. He had 5 dialysis treatments in the hospital, and they knocked him down each time. And he said, I will not live this way, and I don't want her to have to deal with this. So I will not, and I want all treatment stopped. So we called the doctor came back. That's not, I wanted my dad around, but that's what he wanted, and he was living it. So we called the doctor, and the doctor came and said, if we stop treatment, you will not live. And he said, I know where I'm going. I want all treatment stopped. And so 5 days later, he died. That was his wishes. But before he did, he said, I want to be cremated. My mom and dad had never talked about that. He said, I want to be cremated, and I want this to be the easiest thing for everybody. And so one of my brothers at the time was with me, and we called a funeral home, and we put that in progress. And then after my dad died, at one point my mom said, I don't care if you cremate me or bury me, but just don't tell me. So I never, but they already had their plots, and so, both my folks were cremated and buried in their cemetery plots. But she didn't want to know.
I appreciate your candidness, I really do. And I think too, one of the things that I took away from what you said is your dad had the mental capacity to share his thoughts, and y'all were able to honor his wishes because he was able to verbalize those. So make sure you got it in writing somewhere, because if you can't verbalize it, people need to know what your wishes are. So that would be one way to be proactive for sure, even if you don't have a health crisis currently.
And I'll tell you what, most of your kids don't want the stuff you got anyway.
Yeah, that's a whole series.
Yeah, none of my kids want any of the rocks. I'm a geologist. I got a house full of rocks.
All right, and then another question was, and this one I want you guys to really think about, please. Did either of you quit earlier than you would have?
Oh, yeah, I did.
You retired earlier
And
than you would have?
I didn't even count that, but
Yeah,
as far
that's why I'm
as,
saying it, yeah.
as far as the communities she was in, it cost about $300,000, I paid $100,000, and we had a long-term care policy that paid for the other $200. But the average cost, I just looked it up, the average cost for somebody with dementia, the average cost for that person is going to be $400,000. So, and about 70% of that is got to be covered by the family.
70%.
And then how about for you, Gerry?
In my situation, there were things I was buying for my mom, you know, like the pens, things like that, and snacks and all kinds of things. I never really, you know, added that up. When she moved to assisted living, neither of my brothers at that point could help. God just kind of one day said to me, you have some stocks.
Mm-hmm.
And I just happened to be lucky enough to have some stocks, and I supplemented my mom's assisted living to the tune of about $800 a month for a while. I think if I remember right, probably a year, maybe a little more than that. So I did have to draw from with my mom, but with other people I helped, not really. Hospice was a big help. At one point, the nurse at assisted living, my mom had kind of quit eating in a sense, and as it turned out, it's because they changed chefs and she didn't like the new food. But the head nurse told me that she thought my mom was quitting eating and she ought to go under hospice. So anyway, we did put her under hospice. She was a year and a half under hospice because she really wasn't ready, but they do pay for all those additional kinds of things. So I would say that hospice helped me financially because I wasn't paying for all the extra things that I had been doing. And there was extra care. And little by little, my mom was deteriorating some, and so that extra help. Certainly the last probably 6 months, she should have been under hospice. And at the senior communities, if they're not a continuing care community where they have nursing homes with it, they will tell you that when you come to their place, between their staff, home health, and hospice, they will try to always keep your loved one there and cared for. They have to go to a nursing home if they end up with something like a feeding tube or something like that. With my mom, I knew that would never happen because in her 90s, she signed a DNR. And she said, I've lived a great life and I know where I'm going. And if something happens, I don't want extreme measures to keep me alive. And so with that DNR, I knew she would never have to go to those situations. So she was able to stay in the senior community.
Yeah, that's
She died.
That's good information. Well, I know the financial impact. We have more people miss work caring for an adult than they do for their children. I'll say that again. More people miss work caring for an adult loved one than they do for their children. And by 2030, if more people are over 65 than under the age of 18, more and more people are going to be missing work. And employers have got to figure out a way to support their caregiving staff without letting them go because they can't work that 9 to 5 shift because of some healthcare issue that they're trying to deal with. So support in the office, in the work world, is really important. So the number of dollars that are being impacted in our economy because of caregiving is huge. Whether that's because you take early retirement or because you're paying for things out of your pocket. That house bill that I just talked about, it covers the depends and the snacks. You have a certain percentage that you can deduct from your taxes because they know you're taking that on as a caregiver. Whether you're bringing somebody in to help take care of them or you've got some supplies that you're using to take care of them, that's what that tax bill is for. So,
And that's
yeah.
$3,000 a year, and the feds are looking at adding another $7,000 to that.
Yes. Yeah, we've got people talking. Like, it's really encouraging. Herb, a couple of tests on the blood test. What is the blood test for Alzheimer's? Do you have the name of it? Is there like, should they ask for something specific?
As far as I know, it's just an Alzheimer's blood test. I don't
Okay.
think they have an official name.
Okay, and then follow-up question. This is obviously a personal opinion, so you can caveat that, but if you get the blood test and you're diagnosed early, what are the benefits? Or are there any?
Well, some of the medications that, we tried 400 different medications that did not work. Some of those medications may work. You know, there are, I'll tell you what, if you really want to find out what's going on with research, because when my wife was diagnosed, there was only about $500 million going into research for Alzheimer's versus $6 billion a year going into cancer, and you've seen the advantages that we've made there. Right now, because of people like Tom Cole, that's a representative down in Norman, we're up to $4 billion a year that we're getting. You can go to AAIC, Google AAIC dash, and then just pick a year and say highlights, and you'll see what some of the advantages of that are, like blood pressure is important. Believe it or not, constipation is important. You need to have yourself cleaned up. I had to do that on TV one time. They asked me to come in because in summer they released the new statistics, and so nobody from the staff could go, so they asked me to go in, and they must have briefed this reporter on it because I gave all the ones I wanted to give, and then she said, well, isn't there more? And I said, yeah, there is one. And I just had this vision as I'm telling people about constipation that everybody's running out of their houses down to CVS, buying X-Lax and Fleet Enemies. Because it is important. Your gut health is related to your brain health.
Well, I do want to share with you guys one more resource. They could not be here today, but OK Cares is a state resource. And I mentioned to you vouchers for respite. They have a caregiver conference. It is in November. It is both in-person and virtual. So please be on the lookout for that. We'll have some information. I'm sure villages will disseminate it once we get the details on the location and how to log in and all that. But you can go to okcares.com or .gov, I think, right now, and you can look it up. And I think they may have the registration link live, or at least to save the date, so you can get the date down. But it's in November. They are in some transition right now, so they could not be here today. Their office, they just didn't have enough staff to come over here. But I told them I would let you guys know about that. They do support groups as well. So for the non-Alzheimer's issues, they have support groups that might be appropriate for you for caregiving. And that's for all caregiving. This is not just for older adults. This is for if you've got a special needs kid, you know, all kinds of things. So just a really great resource. So I want to mention one more time, you asked about being proactive. The gift is really a great way to get that stuff outlined and make sure you're not forgetting anything. So if you haven't considered taking advantage of that, I would highly recommend you at least look into it. April's got information on that. And I think we have all the questions. Are there any more? You guys have any more? I'm going to ask for your feedback on your surveys. Remember, we're going to do a drawing, and then I'm also going to ask our lovely guests to stay here, but let's give them a round of applause. I'm so grateful to each of you for being so transparent and sharing your journey, because I know that it comes with emotion. It's not, yeah.
I will say it has been my honor to take care of the people that I took care of. It blessed me, as sad as it was to lose each of the ones. And like I said, the time I had with my mom was truly a blessing. And I knew it every day. People my age who lost their parents early, they kept saying, you don't know how lucky you are. I did. Every minute I was blessed to have my mom. And not many get to have their parents to live to be 100.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
it's an honor.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that.
And you know, I was a caregiver, and I still am a caregiver for all those that are in my support groups. And I'll tell you what, there are times after a support group when I make sure I'm the last one out, turn the lights out, and I sit in my car and cry. It has nothing to do with what I went through or what my wife went through. It's she realized what they're going through, and that it's just a tough task to be an Alzheimer's caregiver. So, and by the way, our support groups, I do have 2 of them that are, you can zoom into them as well, because you do reach a point in time when you can't be there in person, but you can still attend by Zoom. You know, it's kind of like the Brady Bunch.
Yeah.
But hey, it works.
Thank you for sharing that. That's great. Well, as I mentioned earlier, our education partners have information. Please go by the tables you did not hit this morning, you came in. Make sure you pick up information from them, and we will see you next month. And we'll look forward to seeing you then. Y'all take